Welcome back to season 2 of the latest word on Black News. I'm your host, Brittany Jones. Super excited to be back here with you all, bringing you all the latest on Black America. And when we talk about that, we know right now democracy is on the line, folks. And who will answer that call? We are now more than a month into President Donald Trump's second term in office, and the nation has been inundated with sweeping changes, including the dismantling of DEI, a direct attack on the Black community at large. We now turn to the latest shakeup, the firing of the nation's highest ranking military officer, Joint Chief of Staff Chairman Charles Q. Brown Jr. Dr. Jonathan Collins, political science professor for Columbia University, is here with us now to break it all down for us. You are here to discuss the future of our democracy, and we know right now it is pretty crazy. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us to kick off season 2.
Of course, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, so we are going to kind of dig into quite a bit today. There's so much going on right now, as I mentioned, but first we're going to start with General Brown. We're talking about the Air Force four-star general. He was nominated under President Biden. He's the second Black person to hold that position as chairman, and now he's out of a job. So let me get your quick thoughts about that first.
Well, it's incredibly unfortunate to say the least. And so, we're going to get to this, later in our conversation, but this is to me the biggest example of the assault on DEI and why it's incredibly dangerous. And so, you look at the Trump administration, the cabinet that he has in place, there's hardly any diversity at all, racial and ethnic diversity. And especially if you're thinking about representation amongst Black folks, there are hardly any Black faces that are a part of the Trump leadership team. The only one that even comes to mind immediately is I think he appointed Herschel Walker as the ambassador to the Bahamas or something ridiculous, right? Like there are, it's almost like the inverse. So you remember the Spike Lee movie, they get mad about the pizza shop because there's all these Italian folks on the wall and there's Black people that are always patronizing the pizza shop. And they destroy it in the end because Sal won't put some Black faces on the wall. That's kind of like that's the do the right thing. That's the name of the movie, Do the Right Thing. At the end of Do the Right Thing, they crash the place because ain't no Black people on the wall. Well, what we're dealing right here, what we're dealing with right here is the inverse. Ain't no Black people on the wall, right? You look at the Trump administration, ain't no Black people on the wall. Well, General Brown was literally the only Black face on the wall, and now he's gone. And so not only is it disturbing because of his credentials and his competence and the fact that he literally was qualified for the job and deserved to be there, but then now you look up and not only do we lose a qualified person in this position leading the Air Force, but now ain't no Black faces on the wall.
I think that is such a strong point to make, and I want to get your reaction to this soundbite I'm going to play for you to see what you say coming out on the other side.
No, not at all. Even though it's unconventional, traditionally these are roles the chairman stays through presidencies. But we heard from Pete Hegseth, the new defense secretary, some weeks ago, saying that he said General Brown should be fired. This is before Hegseth was confirmed in the Post because Brown was too focused on the woke policies of diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, which we know President Trump to this point has really targeted across federal agencies, including at the Pentagon. So this was something that had been widely expected would happen the next couple of weeks.
And so obviously that was Jonathan Lemire reporting. He was on this Washington Week show. He's one of the contributing writers or storytellers, if you will, and talking about the latest with that. What was your reaction to what he said?
Well, it confirms the fact that we are under a witch hunt with this administration, right? He was snuffed out for quote unquote promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. First off, what does that even mean? What was he doing to sort of promote diversity and equity and inclusion other than just being Black, and operating in this space? And so, yeah, that's my immediate reaction is that it feels like a witch hunt. It feels like he was a victim of this political assault on an idea that is quite undefined. Again, what does it mean to be supportive of these things in this context? Like, I think we can have a more thoughtful conversation about what it means to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, you and I. But
Right.
there was nothing about this story that gives me the sense of, oh, like he was fired specifically for promoting the thing that has the entire sort of like legacy and history that DEI has, which has been,
Mm.
that's more than a 20 plus year legacy built on the movement around affirmative action. And so like if that's what was happening, was he trying to create a pipeline for um affirmative action to be employed through the use of the military, which, by the way, which American institutions have been the best historically at diversifying? Oh, wait, it's the military. So,
Mm.
again, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Yeah, I love that. And so also just wanting to go a little bit deeper, I want to share this statement with you. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated released this statement because obviously everybody has been up in arms about what's happening. And this was the statement that they released. They said the fraternity sees his dismissal as a part of a larger agenda to demonize diversity, equity, and inclusion, remove highly qualified African Americans and people of color from positions of power and influence, as well as effectively eliminate and whitewash all public aspects of the country, from national observances, educational access, and curriculum, as well as citizenry. So, what do you think about that statement? Because even when we talk about, this is an aside, the Joy Reid and everybody coming out saying like they're just getting rid of us in all our positions, what do you think about what they've said here?
I think it's incredibly important because, what's at the heart of these critiques of quote unquote DEI is this issue that Black folks in particular, but folks of color, are getting positions and getting opportunities that they are not qualified for. And that's never been what affirmative action has been about. It's never been about creating opportunities for people who are unqualified or underqualified. It's trying to create opportunities for folks who have the same qualifications, but just haven't been given the opportunity. And so yeah, I love this message because they're reminding us of like of where this all started. It's everything that we're seeing right now with the anti-DEI conservative movement just reminds us that we've lost the plot on all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of people that I've spoken to, right, and I'm sure you've heard this from family members and friends, they talked about the fact that we have always traditionally had to work 10 times harder than our counterparts when it came to getting a job, and we had to be standouts. And so when you look at the person now that they said that is President Trump's pick to replace General Brown with, you got to start asking yourself, are we picking the most qualified? Is this DEI argument about being most qualified, or is it about getting rid of Black folks who hold these seats? What do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, just like look at the Joint Chiefs, look at the Joint Chiefs of Staff like compilation. It's not like the Joint Chiefs of Staff is just like a couple of people. This is the head. These are the chairs who are essentially like that. They're like the chiefs of all of the different military branches. And you look at the again, ain't no Black people on the wall. Like this continues to be the theme here. Like you look at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it's not there's already a steep underrepresentation of Black folks in this space. And so, like, when you remove the one Black person from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then you replace that person with a white person, then, like, what are we doing? Like, especially when you have a Black person in this position who is qualified, you remove them to replace them with a white person who, you know, doesn't honestly doesn't seem as qualified. And you're just like, are we're sacrificing. To me, that's the biggest issue here
Okay.
is we are sacrificing the collective good for this political agenda. We are not putting the best people in place in order to satisfy this political agenda. We are turning away people with years of experience, academic credential, and qualification, people that are vetted, that are heralded. We are turning these people away for a political agenda. And that's just insane to me. It's like when when you eat food, you want the best chef.
That's a
You know,
fact.
this is probably a little too close to home, but like when you go on a plane, you want the best pilot. You know, we at what point have we decided that it's good that for to support a version of our politics that would tell us that we don't want the best version of people in these positions of power and decision making? That's completely asinine.
Mm-hmm. And so, to your point, right? So many of the policy changes coming out of this current administration has been unconventional and possibly a direct violation of checks and balances of our democracy. President Donald Trump has even called himself a king. We saw a picture of him with a crown. So I want to get your reaction to this from the View's co-host Sunny Hostin on what she had to say during that show.
I think it would be very difficult. But, I have something to say about this "Long Live the King." It's very interesting. Political commentator and journalist Ezra Klein, I talked about him last week. He wrote in the New York Times, he's excellent, "Don't believe Trump."
Yeah.
And what he said is that Trump has never really wanted to be president. He actually has always wanted to be king. And he also says that his plan this time is to first play king on television. And if we believe he is already king, we will be likelier to let him govern as a king. So don't believe him, because right now what we're seeing is he's waving his scepter, his king scepter.
You know, there's some unfortunate truth to that. And so, like, when we think about democracy, there's a few sort of like basic principles that go into making us a liberal democracy, right? Like, we're not a democracy just because we say we are. We're not even a democracy just because we hold elections. Like, there's some additional requirements, right? Like, we have to have a sort of like universal voter access, so like right to vote. We have to have, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, rights for folks to run for public office, right for citizens and civilians to run for public office, rights for like political competition. So you need elections that are competitive, not just free and fair, but also competitive, freedom of information. And then, of course, like you need these institutions that have these checks and balances so that you can have a representative structure. And so what we're seeing right now is, especially that last part, Trump is completely ignoring all of that. He's moving forward with these executive orders and not really caring much about what Congress has to say about it, and therefore not really caring much about what the American public has to say for it. And the most, the scariest part about that is, let's say, in theory, he could execute this same agenda through democratic processes, right? Like, you have the majority in the House and the Senate. Now, like, you could say, well, they don't have the supermajority needed to push through a filibuster, but whatever. But you have a majority, and you have a majority at the upper and lower house. You have the presidency. Why do you need to move forward? You also have a majority of conservative judges sitting at the Supreme Court, plus a lot of judicial nominations. So why do you need to move forward outside of these representative institutions? And that's the scary part. Executive order after executive order after executive order, when these things actually should be congressional bills signed into law by the president. Again, the fact that he's completely overstepping a process that's already designed for him to succeed and push policy through. Well, yeah, like that sounds like the activity of somebody who doesn't care about process and institution. This is a person who wants to be an authoritarian leader.
Yeah, and it kind of basically answered this question very well, because that's one of the biggest things we wanted to touch on, right? Is kind of unpacking democracy and what it looks like. And it's kind of like going back to the basics of what are the branches of government actually designed to do? And does he actually have the power to make these moves when there are some policymakers who are saying, you got to be able to put things in perspective to where he will be able to be stopped. And there are other people saying that, these actions or lack thereof, they're not doing enough. What do you say to those people who probably don't even remember at this point the breakdown of how the branches of power work, especially in the Black community?
Well, I would say our Black brothers and sisters are no less informed on these issues than our white counterparts. If anything, it's just we don't really have a participation problem in the Black community. We have a representation problem, in that like
Mm.
we just don't get the right representation that we need. Our leaders continue to fail us, but we continue to show up. And so I would say, but that's the thing that makes it challenging right now, is that you
Yeah.
wonder like what is there to show up for? You know, like that's the thing that we run the risk of losing. Like, is there something for us to actually get excited about because or believe in, especially with these institutions. And so, it's one thing when one, we're seeing a slew of executive orders that are very clearly attacking us as Black people. And without the institutions in place, then like, well, what's the response? Like, if we can't trust the court system to come through and strike some of these down, although there have been judges that have been striking down some of the executive orders kind of like one at a time, and
Mhm.
like at least like creating a dam to the flow of them. So there's something there. But then like also, but before we know it, and this is part of why Trump is moving so expeditiously with these executive orders, before we know it, it'll be 2026 and we'll be looking at House of Representative elections, congressional elections, period, because there'll be some Senate elections as well. We'll be looking at this midterm election period, and this will be an opportunity to create some shakeup in the structure of Congress, and actually show some level of voice around whether or not folks agree or disagree with the
Mhm.
action that Trump has taken. And that's the thing that I worry about, is that, well, when we get to the midterm elections, are things that are being done to the institutions themselves and around the institutions, are we actually preparing for a moment where the midterm election results could like matter somewhat less? Are
Mm.
we reaching a point where even when we look at, an election in 2028, is Trump creating a new status quo that like just getting a different president in place won't be able to solve and fix? That like
Mm.
there would be some real damage done here that would take multiple terms of presidents and congressional action and state and local representation to even begin the process of reversing. And so like that's what I would be more concerned about, is, are the institutions weakening? And especially the fact that these are the institutions that not only have we relied on to hold America to its promise, but we actually built these institutions, right? Like the court system is what it is because of us. And you think about Brown v. Board, like the congressional representation is what it is because of us and the critical role that folks in the CBC have played over time.
Mm.
Like these things matter because Black people have forced them to matter. And you wonder what's happening with them weakening, if they'll if the weakening of them now will have long-term effects that we can't even step in and fix again.
Yeah. And, just walking it back for a moment, because you talk about what we built and we're looking at the dismantling of it all, right? And so just going back to even Elon Musk right now with the Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency that's been newly created, and the massive firings and the massive layoffs, all of these things. So I just want to get your take on that. But listen to this soundbite from President Trump actually responding to a reporter on Fox about them questioning him about the email that he sent out.
I thought it was great because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired.
Your thoughts on that?
I think that he's greatly underestimating the importance of federal workers. Working in federal bureaucratic agencies, these are very like technical jobs. These are not jobs that, where the explanation is very simple and straightforward in terms of what they do. Like many of them manage they manage or oversee or support very like complicated projects. For instance, if you're in the U.S. Department of Energy, you're overseeing the implementation of different types of like environmental regulations that are being put in place around. It could be everything from like, trying to build eco-friendly buildings to supporting the more effective land use initiatives that promote like green space and um, you know just more environmentally sort of like ways of using land and space. The Department of Education, for example, that's the department where we've seen a lot of slashing.
Yes.
What they do is not obvious to what they are. Like you would think, well, what does the Department of Education do? Like send out curriculum and monitor all the teachers? Like, no, that's actually not what they do. They provide a lot of grant funding and oversight to states, schools, and districts um, to support students who have very specific and particular needs. They have a Office of Civil Rights where they oversee a lot of investigations around students who have their civil rights violated in the classroom or at the school level. They also do a lot of things with higher education, student loan reform, FAFSA, like, explaining what you do is not always the very sort of easy and obvious thing. And it's just a matter, and that's not the litmus test through which you determine whether or not to keep someone on their job or not. Last I checked, the way to determine whether or not to keep people in their job is to do job performance evaluations. Are you good at the thing we hired you to do? If you're ineffective at the thing that we hired you to do, and we've had conversations about what you need to do to improve, okay, then termination is possible. But if I just have a misunderstanding of how you do the job that you're supposed to do, and I fire you, huh, it's up apparently at that point. If it's me,
Yeah, it's been very, I guess, interesting to watch, and then for many people, definitely disheartening to watch because everyone is watching these things and just unfold day after day after day. It's like we are inundated with the headlines, and quite frankly, some people are feeling very much helpless. Do you think you touched on this a moment ago, but as we wrap up here, do you think that with all of this we've seen happen at the White House at this time, that Black people will still want to go to the polls for the next election, whether it's in the next 4 years for president, or we're talking about even midterms as well?
well, this might be the most interesting and maybe most consequential election for Black folks in the modern history. Because what we've seen post-election is that the Black community is potentially more fragmented than it's been in a while. We've been able to lean on a certain level of Black solidarity for decades now. And if anything, you can maybe argue that the Democratic Party has been a bit over-reliant on that, but it's been there. And I think, now we're at this point where I don't know if that same level of solidarity is in place moving into, the next election. If we are, my concern is less that we won't vote. My concern is more that we won't vote together. That like there will be these dissenting voices. There will be these different directions that are taken. There will be these voices that are given credibility and get taken seriously and in terms of speaking to and informing our community that could lead us astray. I think that's the thing because, who's the voice of Black America right now? And it feels more like a choir than a preacher. And it's a choir that's singing on different notes, not a choir that's singing in harmony. And so, have you ever been to a Black church when they sing it off key? It ain't pretty.
Listen, you are super right about that because you're sitting around like, oh, they might need to sit down. We could point that person out. And like you said, it's like right now, this is a time of like needing people to come together. And you see, the voices like Jasmine Crockett. You see some people who are really standing up and speaking up about what's happening. But then you have folks who are at home saying, even on the Republican end, even those who voted for President Trump are saying, y'all not doing enough for us. And then the Democrats ain't doing enough for us. So then it's like, how do you say, hey, go out and vote? Because everybody feels like nobody is doing enough while things are just being shifted in ways that no one imagined could,
Exactly.
even though people said it.
Because it's like for every Jasmine Crockett that we have, we got a Charlemagne, we got a Dr. Umar, we got like all of these people that have a platform that are saying whatever they want to say about Black America and our politics and like what's good for us. And, I worry that we're distracted right now. Like when you hear that person in the choir that can't sing, it distracts us. It's like, ooh, you hear that? You need to she need to sit down. He need to sit down. And it just feels like, well, it's bad enough when it's one person. Well, what happens if the majority of the choir is singing off key? I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah. I think right now, Dr. Collins, we all are. And I definitely think it's a conversation that we're going to continue to have, especially for not only Trump's first 100 days for Black America, but also just this entire presidency. It's definitely giving us something to pay attention to, even though a lot of folks may seem distracted, but that may be the key, is to make so much noise that people stop listening. But for some of us, we're tuned in just like you. So I appreciate having you here with us to kick off season 2. I'm looking forward to bringing you back to kind of talk about all these things from immigration, education, you name it, especially with your take on, you've studied African American studies. So I'm excited to hear more from you.
I'm excited to be a part of the show. I'm glad that you're offering the show to us as a community and as a society. I'm glad that your voice is here. We need your voice. We need it amplified, and I'm happy to do anything I can to support your voice being amplified. I'm glad you're here.
We want to thank Dr. Collins so much for being here with us today. We want to thank you for joining us as we kick off season 2. But stay with us. We definitely will be covering all of Trump's first 100 days and how it impacts Black America. Until next time, we'll see you soon.